If you give a climate denier 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised when more of America is underwater? We need a president who respects science.
Does not believe in the Constitution or the rule of law, and a president who does not believe in science. And when you don't believe in science, you cannot address the pandemic that we're seeing today, where the United States now has the highest per capita death rate for COVID-19 of any major country on earth. You cannot address the existential threat of climate change unless you believe in science. Trump does not. Biden does.
The bottom line, I will spare no effort to turn this pandemic around once we're sworn in on January 20th. To get our kids back to school safely, our businesses growing, and our economy running at full speed again, and to get an approved vaccine manufactured and distributed as quickly as possible to as many Americans as possible, free of charge. We'll follow the science. We'll follow the science. Let me say that again. And we'll adjust to new data when it comes in.
You know, I can talk through for most countries in the world what the quality of their response has been, whether they're, you know, bad governments in other respects or not. The expertise have seen, okay, what have they done with testing and mask wearing and contact tracing? It's quite surprising. You know, some have done very, very well and some have done poorly. So that's a purely technical thing, not a political thing. Most governments take advantage of their scientists and listen to them. They don't undermine them and attack them.
I suspect you have an opinion.
A point of view, I would say.
Okay.
I would say. So I'm broadly scientifically literate, but what I will say of this virus, I think we're in the middle of a massive experiment worldwide. And
where are the guinea pigs?
Maybe. The experiment is, will people listen to scientists?
Hello, my friends. So as you just saw from the clips that I showed you, it is becoming disturbingly common for politicians to justify their actions, justify their political decision-making on the basis of science, the capital S, unquestionable science. And I think this does two things for them. First, it absolves them of all responsibility for their political decisions, because what they do in office, as long as it's based on science, is no longer the result of their personal value judgments. It's them just following the science. So it's not really their responsibility. And the second thing it does is it creates this shield, this bubble of unquestionability. Because to people who buy into this, if you question the political policies, the laws, the mandates that are supposedly based on science, then you are a kook, you're a crazy science denier, you're out of touch with reality. This is just objective facts that we're basing these things on. How can you question it? But anybody who has taken an intro level course to science, any kind of scientific field, should know that political decisions, laws, policies, that sort of thing, is not and could not ever be based on science. Science is strictly limited to understanding and explaining the physical world. It's about providing objective explanations, theories, as they're called, for how things work in the physical world. It's how objects relate to each other. And it cannot ever say anything that is based on values. Values are outside the scope of science. Any honest scientist could tell you this. And the fact that we have politicians and so-called scientists today who are declaring that their politics are based on science and that they're going to have a political regime that is based on science, that just shows how brazen they are, how boldly they are using a ridiculous rhetorical trick, and they should know better. They really should know better. So if these laws are not actually based on science, because they couldn't possibly be, what are they based on? I think that the implicit value of these laws relating to COVID, especially, this is what most of this is about. These laws, such as the lockdowns, the mandatory quarantines of healthy populations, these social distancing measures, the confinement measures, the soon-to-be vaccination laws that you can bet are coming. The implicit assumption or value behind these laws is the idea that any and all personal rights and liberties can be restricted and limited and even completely taken away if an argument can be made that it's going to reduce the risk of death, that it's going to reduce the risk of sickness, injury, or death, or save lives, as they like to say. So no longer are our rights and liberties inalienable as they supposedly were when the country was founded in the Declaration of Independence. But they are quite alienable if this argument can be made that the number of deaths, the risk, the statistical probability can be reduced if we take away these rights and liberties. The security, this reduction in risk is 100% justifiable if this argument can be made. However, that kind of sets a dangerous precedent, in my opinion, because if we take that value and apply it universally, we begin to see that the government has a justification to interfere with any and all aspects of our lives. It's near endless, the amount of things that can be justified by this value, such as, alongside our vaccination cards, where we're going to have the first, second, third doses checked off, and probably yearly boosters checked off, and carry around this vaccination card and present it to the security guard at the grocery store to get in, or present it to get a airplane ticket, or things of that nature. We should also have exercise and diet cards, because one of the biggest killers in the United States is obesity, heart disease, diabetes. These are practically epidemics. These are epidemic issues, and we should be having a war on obesity and heart disease and diabetes and these sorts of diseases. And the war absolutely justifies creating things like, let's say, government-run gyms that we are mandated to check in at least 3 times a week and do our weekly exercises with the oversight of a government bureaucrat, and have them check off our exercise card. And when we go to the grocery store, there should be government hired dietary counselors who will scan our carts when we go to the checkout and make sure that we are following best practices when it comes to our diets. Because we need to have a war on these chronic diseases that are killing so many people. We need to be reducing this risk at all costs. We need to be saving lives at any cost. This should be the future, I would say. And you know, what am I doing right now? I'm driving a car. Do you know how many people die in car accidents every year? We need to ban cars. We need to completely overhaul the transportation infrastructure in this country, because the risk of death is exceedingly high in a car. Tens of thousands of people die every year, and that's just unacceptable. We need to ban cars and completely overhaul the transportation system to make it much safer. We need to be saving lives. There's an epidemic of car fatalities, and we need to have a war on automobiles. And lastly, the last example that I'll give that I can come up with is, did you know that non-whites in white societies are much higher in terms of per capita violence and crime rate? Especially in Europe, the migrants who are coming in from Africa and the Middle East are just off the charts in terms of the risk that they bring of violent crime. And if we want to be saving lives, if we want to be reducing the rate of crime, reducing the rate of violence, and just reducing these risks in general and saving lives, we really need to have a war on migration. So let's apply this universally. I'm starting to like the idea. Anyway, I think you get my point. This idea of basing our laws and politics on science is just ludicrous and in-your-face bold in terms of it being a rhetorical trick that works on the uneducated, that works on people who want to appear as though they're smart and intellectual but don't really have a clue about the scope and limitation of science, and people who are easily conned by these emotional pulling of the heartstrings of, we need to be saving lives and this is what the science says and this and that, and they don't really care. They don't really have a concept of what happens when you give this corrupt government the ability to justify basically unlimited intrusion into your life for the sake of promised security and risk reduction. It's absurd. And even the very value that they are basing this type of thing on is not applied universally, because if it was applied universally, like I just said, people would reject it outright. But I wouldn't doubt it's going to keep creeping that way, where we're going to have more and more things justified by this type of securitization, this type of risk reduction philosophy, and I could see it going that way, even though it's pretty much joking in a lot of this video, giving examples to show how ridiculous it is. I can actually see it going that way. So, except for the last part, of course. Try to bring that up in a conversation with like a liberal or someone who's really into this COVID lockdown shit. Try to bring that up and say, well, you want to reduce the risk of death? You want to reduce the risk of violence and reduce risks in general? How about curtailing some migration? Anyway, thank you for watching.